In this video, we take an in-depth look at the brand new Apollo Solo audio interface from Universal Audio. Is it a replacement of the Arrow, or is it an extension of the Apollo series? Packed with class-leading features and a competitive price point, is this your next audio interface? Hi, my name's Ed from edthorn.com, here to help you make the most out of your home studio. Universal Audio have just released the Apollo Solo audio interface, and it does in fact take over from their Arrow interface, and it also takes over from the Apollo Twin Solo audio interface. Confused? Let me explain. The Arrow was previously a more budget-friendly alternative to the Apollo series. The converters, although similar, were not quite the same quality as in the Apollo, and the units only came with a single Shark DSP processing core. I'll explain more about what these are later in the video because they're very important. UAD have decided to ditch the Arrow series and make the Apollo series more affordable and more accessible to more people, and the result is the Apollo Solo. The Apollo Solo is priced at £450 or $500, and unlike the Twin, is bus powered, making it more portable. The Apollo Twin and the X4 need to be mains connected because they require more power to operate the additional processing they offer. The Solo comes in two formats, a Thunderbolt 3 option for Mac users and a USB-C option for PC users. Which version are you going to get? I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. The Solo comes class-leading 24-bit 192 kHz audio digital converters, comes with two mic line combination inputs and a Hi-Z instrument input on the front there, and two line outs for your monitors on the back there. And going from left to right on the top of the unit there, you have the input selector to choose between mic and line input. Note that Hi-Z will automatically take precedent when you insert a jack into the front there. There's a high-pass filter set at 75 Hz, a 48 volts phantom power switch, a -20 decibel pad button, and a stereo linking button should you be recording acoustic guitars or stereo overheads, for example. The preamp button toggles between the two inputs, and the monitor switch there toggles between monitor out and headphone out. And the big dial in the middle there adjusts the volume for your monitors and your headphones, and also your input gain on your channels. The headphone port is a great quality preamp, and even cranked to the maximum, it sounded clear, it didn't distort, and it genuinely sounded really good. And there was plenty of headroom on my Sennheiser HD300 Pro headphones, which have an impedance of 64 ohms. Now, the build quality of this unit is good, it feels sturdy, it's got a nice textured finish, and there's a rubber base so you don't scratch your desk. And the buttons feel quite solid as well, although not quite as solid as on my Apollo Twin. All the good stuff you can expect on an Apollo Twin, making this a highly functional desktop audio interface. And this is partly, and I say partly because there's many reasons, partly why this device is a step up from anything else below this and close to this in the price point, in my opinion. The Solo comes with 14 UAD plugins, including their awesome LA2A and 1176 compressors, PulTec EQs, 610 preamp emulations, guitar and bass amplifier plugins, as well as some reverb and delay options. This is literally everything you need to start recording. Now, I believe the PC version is supplied with an external power supply. The Mac version can only be powered by Thunderbolt 3, and you have to have a Thunderbolt 3 port on your computer. Trust me, I found this out the hard way. I thought I could use my 2015 Thunderbolt 2 Mac to power this, and I tried every possible combination of cables. Trust me, it doesn't work. You need a Thunderbolt 3 output on your Mac, which means you have to have a 2016 model or later, which comes with a Thunderbolt 3 output and the required Thunderbolt 3 cable. I believe this is to do with Thunderbolt 2 cables only being able to supply 60 watts of power, and Thunderbolt 3 supplies 100 watts, and clearly that's what this device needs. Now, the other thing to note is that conveniently, Universal Audio do not supply you with the Thunderbolt 3 cable in the box. Come on, Universal Audio, every other manufacturer supplies their interfaces with the necessary cabling. Surely this is pretty basic. So what are the Shark DSP processing cores I keep mentioning? These are the units that handle the extensive processing required to operate Universal Audio plugins, and these enable two things. Firstly, the cores enable you to monitor yourself whilst recording through Universal Audio plugins with near zero latency. The latency is so close to zero, it is in fact sub 2 milliseconds, which you're simply not going to hear, which given the processing required is very impressive. More on this a little bit later in the video. Secondly, because the DSP processing occurs on the Apollo, off-site as it were, your computer isn't having to deal with the processing of the Universal Audio plugins, freeing up your computer's CPU power for other functions, including operating other plugins. Now, if you're new to the Universal Audio universe here, something to bear in mind is that only UAD plugins can be processed on a UAD device. You can't export another manufacturer's plugins onto your Apollo Solo, it simply won't work. You can only use UAD plugins with your Apollo devices. Conversely, it doesn't work the other way. You can't offload UAD plugins onto your computer to free up processing power on your Apollo. The Apollo is the sole device that can do your UAD plugin processing. Now, you can also use your UAD plugins for mixing in your DAW, but again, you have to have an Apollo unit connected to your computer. The Apollo interfaces come with their own mixing software called Console. Note, this is not a DAW and you don't record into Console. It is simply a highly functional digital mixer for routing your inputs, your headphone mixers and your outputs. Your audio will pass through Console out to your DAW where it will then be recorded. It is in Console, however, where the real UAD magic happens. This is where we can insert Unison Preamps and insert plugins through which we can monitor in real time. Now, the plugins that come with the Solo are mostly the legacy versions. In another video, I'll go into more detail explaining the differences between the full versions and the legacy versions. But in essence, the legacy versions are limited versions of the plugins, but the trade-off is that they use less DSP power, so we can use more of them in our Solo. Some of the full versions are very DSP intensive, and with only one DSP core in our Solo, we could run out of DSP processing power very quickly. So using the legacy versions is a good workaround from Universal Audio. Once we've set up our desired plugin chain, we have the option to simply monitor through these, or we can record the compression, EQ and reverb settings and print those with the audio as we record. This is where the real flexibility of the Apollo series stands out. We'll have a listen to those monitor settings later on in the video. The Apollo series of interfaces is held in high regard for many reasons, including the onboard DSP processing and near zero latency monitoring. But arguably the most valuable feature is the legendary Unison technology channel strip preamp emulation system. By integrating hardware and software, Unison technology physically reconfigures your Apollo's impedance and gain staging to replicate the sounds of the world's most recorded microphone preamps and guitar amplifiers. Effectively, you have digital versions of the most famous and sought-after studio recording equipment inside a little box on your desktop. Later on in the video, you can hear an A/B comparison between the built-in preamps on the Solo and also the Neve 1073 channel strip emulation on the Unison insert, and also we'll have a listen to the monitoring signal chain I've previously set up and how that sounds when printed with the audio. The next video in this series is going to explore the Unison preamp feature in more detail, and we're going to explore some more of the plugins, including the Neve 1084, the Manley Vox Box, the Avalon Tube Strip, and my favourite, the SSL E-Series channel strip. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss the rest of the videos in this series focusing on the Apollo interfaces. So not only do you get 14 UAD plugins for free, near zero latency monitoring, of which you can record your settings, Unison preamp emulations, and class-leading audio to digital conversion. If you're on a Mac, you also get a free DAW. Yes, Universal have released Luna, their own digital audio workstation. They pushed forward the scheduled release to earlier this year so people could access it during lockdown, and they've been relentlessly releasing updates and adding features over the last few months. Unfortunately, Luna is not available on PC, and I haven't read any literature from Universal Audio to suggest that they plan to release it. However, with so many DAWs being available for PC for free, to stay competitive, it wouldn't surprise me if this is something they did in the future. I have 3 videos exploring the exciting features on Luna, the first of which will come up here, and all 3 links will be in the description below. My favourite part of Luna has to be the shape sample library. The functionality is brilliant, and the quality of the samples in the library is some of the best I've ever heard. This is not a DAW with questionable sounding samples. UAD have clearly put a lot of time and work into making this a really good product. Alright, so here we are in Console, and we have our analog inputs, our virtual inputs, and we have our settings where we can see at which device is registered, which is the Solo. We have our inputs, our virtual inputs, and our outputs. We can adjust the sample rate and the clock source in hardware settings there. And at the top, we have our Neve 1073 Unison preamp. Now, I've had to set this up on a demo But the beauty of UAD is that you are allowed to demo all of their plugins for 14 days from the date you register your hardware. Now, the beauty of the Apollo universe is that the software and hardware is fully integrated. So when I change the mic or line input, it is in fact changing the mic and line inputs on the device. They are fully integrated. As you can see here, I'm playing with the gain dial, and that is changing on the device, that is, and that's changing the gain in console. And on our inserts page, we have our plugins for monitoring. So you can see I've got the LA2A compressor there, the PulTec EQ, and the RealVerbPro. Compression of 50, a little bit of sub and a little bit of top on the PulTec there. Now, the beauty with a lot of these plugins is there's loads of presets. So I've just selected a random one. I can't remember which one I recorded with, but I was fiddling with that when I was recording. I've just set up a generic one for the sake of this part of the video. And we also have an auxiliary section on the side here where we can put more inserts. So for example, if I was just tracking, that would be where I would put the reverb. I probably wouldn't record with the reverb, but I'm going to do that for example purposes in this video. And just quickly, I forgot to mention this while I had my solo plugged in, but if you want to record the plugins on your insert strip that you can monitor with, you simply have to press this blue button. It goes to red, and that will then record as you're tracking. Or if you want to record the insert effects, press this button here. Same thing, does the same thing, except this, as you just saw, turns all of them to record rather than just individual channels like you can do there. All right, first up we have the Apollo Solo preamp here. There's no processing or anything other than a little pitch correction for your listening comfort. And the world keeps spinning, we don't know why, and we're still here with no reason why. All right, and next up we have the Neve 1073 Unison Preamp. Now, I've tried to match the gains as closely as possible, but obviously the Unison feature here is physically changing the gain structure of the Apollo preamp. But I've tried to match them as close as I can. As you can see, they are very close. They are slightly different only because they are different performances. And the world keeps spinning, we don't know why, and we're still here with no reason why. And finally, we have the Neve 1073 with the monitoring effects chain imposed on the signal here. And you'll see that the peak transients are significantly reduced, and that is the compressor doing exactly its job. Remember, the reverb's on there as well, and the PulTec EQ is just adding a little bit of color to the Neve preamp there. And the world keeps spinning, we don't know why, and we're still here with no reason why. So the reality is the Apollo interfaces are used in studios across the world because they're super reliable and they sound great. And also the Unison Preamp feature really sets the Apollo interfaces apart from any other brand of interface. And as you've just heard, the preamps are very clear, smooth, and detailed. So what did you think of the Neve 1073 Unison Preamp emulation there? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Could you tell much of a difference? Was it what you were expecting? Is it something you will use yourself? For me, there's a distinct tonal characteristic imposed on the sound there. You've got the slightly fizzy top end of the Neve, but the real warmth in the mids. And UAD have a whole host of other excellent preamp emulations, some of which we're going to explore in the next video, so if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And what about the monitoring effects we printed with the audio? Not only does this really enhance the listening and recording experience by adding compression and reverb, we also get studio quality results straight out of the box, potentially saving us a lot of time in the mix process later because we won't have to reapply these processes. I really like how this sounds, and the versatility this feature provides us really sets the Apollo series above other interfaces. YouTube is going to make 2 video suggestions for you here. Please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're notified when the rest of these Apollo videos come out. And please, if you've liked the video and found value in the video, please do hit the like button and comment. It does help the channel grow, it helps YouTube recognize the video and so on. In the meantime, thank you for watching, be kind to one another, and I will see you on the next one.